Hello friends, this is Chandrakant from Akulmek Technologies. Welcome to Top Brass. Dear viewers, as you know that we have discussions with famous personalities and people who have achieved something in life, and therefore today in Spotlight, let me welcome my friend from Ahmedabad. He's a senior advocate at Ahmedabad High Court and he has been practicing. His name is Mr. Nagesh Sood. Nagesh, welcome to Top Brass.
Hi CK, how are you?
I'm good,
Hi
Nagesh.
everyone. Hope hope everyone is doing well in these lockdown period, and I wish everybody well, uh, both mentally and physically.
Thank you, Nagesh. In fact, for the benefit of our viewers, I would like to give little introduction about you, Nagesh. Many people know you because you're very popular among some people, and then others also who are watching for the first time. For their benefit, let me introduce Nagesh. You are a very senior lawyer, and you have a lot of opinion about legal matters. And we will be actually starting a series from today where you will talk about your opinion on different legal and social matters. But for today, we will discuss about the recent demise of the famous film star Sushant Singh Rajput, which has shaken the nation. And people are talking about various reasons, and there are a lot of urban legend around it. So, what we want to discuss today, and we have Nagesh on the panel, we want to basically talk about the mental health related subject. What led to the suicide committed by Sushant Singh Rajput? And there may be a lot of people affected by this kind of a syndrome. So, with this information and without further ado, let me ask the same question from Nagesh. Nagesh, waiting to hear from you.
Yes, CK, suicide actually, which has nothing but it's a cry for help, and we all know that Sushant Singh's suicide has really moved the world, not only his family, but every individual, his fans have been moved by this incident. Now, when we talk of suicide, suicide is a cry for help. What we hear in the media, there are different views given by his friends, his families, etc., are maybe various. The opinions may be various. But when we talk about suicide, suicide is a cry for help. It is a manifestation of a person's customary coping mechanism failure. Basically, when a person is not able to cope up with his distress, with his difficulties, such a step is taken by a person. So, it is now considered as a serious mental state and an act which affects not only individuals but families, friends, and the entire society if one person commits suicide. If we look at the statistics, the WHO statistics tells us that about 8 lakh people commit suicide in a year. That means in 40 seconds, there is one suicide which takes place. You can very well imagine the seriousness of the issue. Now, what is the compelling circumstances? What are the factors? The main factors is that a person is unable to cope up with his life. There are different scenarios where a person is undergoing and is unable to express, unable to share his grief, his sorrow, his loneliness with any other person.
Nagesh,
So,
to you for a moment here because I think there are two very important aspects you have talked about. One was the people are driven to take this step, which is really the most difficult and ultimate step for anyone, and you say that it's a cry for help. So, if this is a step and this is the messaging people are giving by saying, "Hey, I need help," but next day, next moment, they are not there. So, who others are going to help? So, do you have any opinion? While we understand this is cry for help, but the person has already taken a step and he will not be available from that point onwards. So, how do we cope up with that situation where if there is an early warning which others can see and try to help this person?
Well, CK, as you just said, that, after suicide, what is to be done? It has come as a shock to everyone that Sushant Singh had committed suicide. Now, there could be a lot of symptoms. When we say it is a cry to help, 95% people who commit suicide do not want to die. Their wish is to live. But unfortunately, when they look around, there is nobody there to share their grief, their sorrow, their loneliness. And therefore, it is very much necessary that people around that person must uh, come forward and see the symptoms which a person is notifying to everyone and come forward for help. You have to try a bit of uh, gain trust from them so that that person is able to connect with you and open up with you. So that's a gradual process which you have to begin. Usually, around the middle of the conversation, the person would sort of come out with what is really going on in his life and uh, why he needs help. So, when you start a conversation with a person, you start listening to the story of that person, you would understand how to go about it. Basically, what is your responsibility? A person around has a responsibility of listening to that person warmly. You have to show your warmth that you are listening to that person without being judgmental or critical. If a person has a problem, you generally, people have this idea of being judgmental. People would look at somebody's problem and try to criticize that person or the problem. But what really a person need is a non-judgmental, non-critical hearing of his uh, problem. So if that is given to that person, probably he will come out with his story and can share his grief to the other person, which would again lighten him. I mean, the stress, the feelings which he's overburdened with would get shared with the other person, and therefore that person would feel lighter. The other thing is that what you need to give is an unconditional emotional support. Unconditional emotional support would allow you to concentrate on the feelings which a person is going through. Maybe person when he's talking to you, maybe he's very angry, he's very depressed, or he's kind of not able to speak. There would be times when he would be completely silent about talking about his problem. So one has to give, understand the feelings that person is going through and give an emotional support while giving him an assurance that you would keep everything, whatever he shares, confidential, and you would not reveal his identity to another person. Basically, for winning the trust of that person, you need that a person builds up a trust in you to share whatever he is going through. So that is very important for a person to help a person with these kind of symptoms.
I have a question, Nagesh, because I think what you are saying is very important with regard to how do we basically have a social life with each other. I think in today's world, what you're asking us to do is basically because we don't know who's going to do this, take this step, who is going to go through that situation in life because people don't share their greatest secrets with others. So I think there is a need for a lot of orientation for the people, for everyone, to understand that they are themselves are going through these symptoms and they should take help as number one. And number two is the people who are around that person. Like you're saying that you have to be warm, have little warm in relationship. People have habit of sharing with each other. So if these things are not happening, I think it will be very tough to even find a solution to this issue.
Yes, of course, CK, what we need to see is, first of all, we need to identify these symptoms and the signs a person is going through when he's under depression. Usually, when you must have seen around your workplace or amongst your family, there are people who want to stay in isolation. They they don't want to involve themselves. They are in their own cocoon. Then some people show their uh, feelings of low self-esteem. Some people are perfectionists. I would here like to have an opinion about what Sushant Singh's personality was. It seemed like he was a perfectionist. He wanted to everything doing correct. And while the process was on, I mean, he must have gone through some failures. And naturally, when a person is doing well in life, there are at times failures which are faced by those people. And when that failure comes, one needs to be able to cope up with that failure, which is very important. And how do you cope up with that failure is that you build up confidence in yourself, which can also happen by sharing your thoughts, by sharing your feelings with others. Because if you're in an isolation, you would not be able to share your feelings. So it is very important, whenever a failure comes in anybody's life, one has to share with those failures with somebody who's maybe an elderly person, somebody who's very close to you. And gradually, people would then come forward for your help. So that is what I feel, that in the case of Sushant Singh, he had shown signs. He cried for help and spoke to a lot of people. I mean, he tried to reach out to a lot of people, but unfortunately, uh, in their profession, in his profession, there were not too many people who could come to his help. Maybe because of the lockdown situation, also, people were unable to help him, reach out to him. And the second thing is, there is a mentality amongst boys, males, that they are sometimes not able to express themselves because they've been taught to be very strong. They've been taught to be not, you know, shed tears whenever there is a problem. So that kind of thing has been built up in boys in our culture, and therefore they are not able to share, and probably sometimes they do not know what expression to use, what feelings they need to share with others. So that is the difficult thing which sometimes people face who are who are little introvert, or who are not able to talk about themselves or in general in public. And therefore, these things have to be worked on in order to see that you are able to save a life.
In fact, this is a very good advice, Nagesh, that people should not get confused between introvert and extrovert. But I think by habit, they should start be very frank with others, with people who are around them. Now that brings to the second point that you are making is about the factors involved. So would you like to talk a little bit based on your experience, because you work with the judiciary in India, you must be seeing a lot of different types of incidents and cases. So what are the different factors involved uh, which forces people to take these drastic steps?
Basically, you see, when we talk of depression, depression occurs to a person when a problem is persistent for a longer time. If somebody is facing a problem for a long time and he has not been able to get out of it, then a person gets into depression. Now, that depression could be a clinical disorder where you need an psychiatrist or psychologist help. You also need to have little medicines. But the factors generally what we see where a person is uh, kind of under depression is that he loses interest in life. Basically somebody who gets irritated very fast of at the drop of a hat, a person is not able to control his anger. Sometimes person is having sleepless night, uh, he's not able to sleep well, he's not able to eat well. And there are conditions when people who are in depression eat a lot. They would be eating much more than their capacity. So uh, these are some of the factors. There could be a family pressure, there could be a social pressure, there could be a parental pressure. We see all sorts of things happening. Family pressure could be because of marriage, because of relationships, because of other factors. Then there are social factors. In the present case, the social factor is that there is a bullying, there is people trying to downplay you, they want to downgrade you. All these factors come when you are going in a working environment. At home also, like if we talk about students, there is a study pressure, there is a competition, unhealthy competition between parents, between students. So that brings a lot of pressure on a person, and sometimes he's not able to cope up with those pressures. And therefore it is very much necessary that these things have to be identified. The person's capacity to cope up must be seen by the closed ones. Persons who are near or dear ones, could be family member, could be of a close friend. And if that is seen, you are very well able to identify the changes, what is happening in that person's life.
Uh, Nagesh, this discussion is very interesting, but we are short of time today. So today, just to summarize our discussion, we have discussed 2 points. One is the mental health needs to be relooked from a totally different arena. We need to see, while we are successful as a nation, but we have to now concentrate more on how do we improve our mental health. So in today's discussion, we have talked about what are the factors involved where people are pushed to the wall and they take the drastic actions. Uh, I think these can be easily corrected by changing the way of life. So in tomorrow's discussion, we will talk about some of these points which will help us improve our mental health. So for today, it was pleasure talking to you, Nagesh. We'll catch up tomorrow in tomorrow's session.
Thank you very much. It was lovely talking to you, CK. Bye bye. Take care.
Bye bye.